Hi, it's Mark Stellingworth again, here for Brigadoon Radio. Brigadoon's the place where entrepreneurs and thought leaders gather to discuss emerging issues shaping commerce and culture. Today we have Michael Rivera, who just gave a fantastic talk.
Thank you.
And Michael, you are the executive director and founder at USC Marshall School of Business for Founder Central.
Founder Central, an entrepreneurship initiative in the business school.
Okay,
That's right.
but before that though, you got your law degree over at Penn State.
Law degree at Penn State, undergraduate at Georgetown. Yep, born and raised on the East Coast.
Yeah, so what made you decide to make the switch off to the West Coast?
Probably a couple things, to be fair. The first and most important is my wife is from California, and
Okay.
once we got married, she wanted to relocate, be closer to family.
Okay.
And the second was, after 31 winters on the East Coast, I was very open to being in California. And so
Fair
we
enough.
moved there, and it's been wonderful.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So you basically, your school is about entrepreneurism. To me, it seems kind of counterintuitive. There's a certain amount of friction between academia and the entrepreneurial spirit. How does your institution address that? And you kind of touched on that in the talk. Could you go into that a
Yeah,
little bit?
I think the typical or traditional structure within academia isn't the best for true entrepreneurship, right? And I think a bit of that, and again, it's not a value judgment, good or bad, right? But I think tenure is such a thing where like it's highlighting research, right? And it's highlighting these types of things where within the Entrepreneurship Center at USC, we don't confer tenure upon professors, right? So what we end up doing is getting professors that stay for 4, 5, maybe 6 years. They provide a tremendous amount of value. The point at which they want to take that step in their career to have tenure, they leave. And that's okay, right? It gives us an opportunity to then backfill that spot with what we think are another, up and coming faculty in those areas. And so one of the ways that we stay current structurally is by not conferring tenure. So we have a fairly good cycle. Like if everyone was leaving every year or so, it wouldn't work, right?
Yeah.
But we're able to retain people for long enough that we have enough consistency and yet enough refreshing of content and interest.
It's an interesting model.
Yeah.
And how long did it take you guys to develop, or was that right from the get-go?
No, not right from the get-go. I mean, USC's entrepreneurship program began in 1979 with a single class,
Wow,
right?
geez.
And it's sort of grown a little bit over time. The center that we have right now that focuses on entrepreneurship has been around for almost 20 years. And so that model has been in place for almost 2 decades now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are some of the properties of a good founder? Things where you meet somebody, you may not agree with their idea, but you say, this person has the qualities that we want and is going to be successful in the future.
Yeah, so I think that there's a couple of things that come to mind. Number one is sort of an internal motivator, an internal drive to do things, right? What we see is that we don't have to work to motivate real founders or real entrepreneurs. They come in with a passion, with an engine, they're ready to go. Oftentimes what we have to do is help them figure out how to focus that, right? But that energy and that drive is there from the beginning. The other is what I would call sort of an insatiable curiosity, right? Founders are typically very curious. How do things work? Why do they work this way? Let's pull this apart. Could it work better? That type of thing. So they're always asking questions. They're always curious about what's going on around
They're
them.
not adherents to the status quo either,
They're
right?
not adherents to the status quo,
And
right?
if they see a problem, they can try and fix it. That's the other thing you really mentioned.
Yeah, or they question, why is this a problem? Why has nobody fixed this yet? Could I fix this? What would that look like? And I think importantly, for our cut on entrepreneurship, is this something people would pay for, right? Is it a product or service that people will actually pay for, right? If there's a problem and we can solve it, but there isn't really a market for it, that's okay. There's an area for that. Social entrepreneurship, it's not something that we touch very often, right? But that's kind of where the founders, that's the highest potential students that we see within entrepreneurship exhibit those characteristics.
So this is your first time at Brigadoon.
My first time at Brigadoon.
And
yeah.
what are your first impressions overall?
I think it's fantastic. I've been to a lot of conferences in my past life as a venture investor, and now within academia, I've been to a number of conferences. The problem I have with the larger conferences is that meeting people that are of high quality and very helpful for what you're doing tends to be left into happenstance, right? It's quick conversations. Maybe you bump into someone, maybe you don't. I think what Mark Ross has done with this smaller cohort of people has really been mindful about who's here, how he's matching people up. You can really have meaningful interactions with everybody who's in attendance, and that's fantastic.
Yeah, I completely agree. So over the last year, any book, album, movie that you had a profound impact on you recommend to our watchers, our listeners?
Yeah, so I think if you have an interest in entrepreneurship, right, one of the things that I would suggest is a lot of times people think entrepreneurship is something that can't be learned or taught, right? there's a book. It's called The Founder's Dilemmas, and it's written by Noam Wasserman.
Okay.
The Founder's Dilemmas by Noam Wasserman. And it's a good mix between thoughts on entrepreneurship backed up with deep and rich data over a 20-year period. And it's a very powerful entrepreneurship book.
Nice. Well, listen, great talk, and thank you for taking the time today.
Happy. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
All right.
Look, come.
See you later.